Hello and welcome to the Seafood Business Accelerator Innovation Plan Canvas webinar series. I'm Brady Clancy, your host, and with me is Bruce Wallinger, SBA operations expert. The goal of Seafood Business Accelerator is to help you capture more value for your harvest. This 10-part series focuses on the planning portion of the Seafood Business Accelerator. Having a plan will help you focus, help you communicate what you want to do, and guide you as you grow or change your business. It's like a roadmap to where you want to go. Each webinar will include a short discussion and a presentation about a specific innovation plan topic. This webinar is about distribution. I'm pleased to welcome Bruce to talk about this important topic. Bruce, tell us a bit about yourself and why understanding the different distribution channels is important to the success of small-scale seafood harvesters.
Hi, Brady. Nice to chat with you as well. I'm Bruce Wallinger. I've been in the food industry for over 30 years, most of it in seafood as a BC processor and marketer of products throughout the world and domestically and cross-border. What is a fundamental importance of distribution is the movements and decisions of getting your product to your customer. So it reflects costs, it reflects route to market, it reflects many, many important decisions that you'll be involved with.
Awesome. Thanks, Bruce. I've had the pleasure of crossing your path a few times over the years, and I'm always amazed by your strategic views on the food industry. Makes total sense why you became the Chief Strategy Officer for the Pacific Seafood Industry Association. Maybe tell me a bit about your role with the organization and some of the unique challenges facing the seaweed industry.
Yes, well, I became involved in the seaweed industry through working on feasibility studies with some of the members in the seaweed community and just became totally fascinated and passionate about the importance of seaweed cultivation as a food product and ingredients. It just covers so many important regenerative practices that I think now we're starting to see BC embrace. In terms of distribution, the same challenges with seaweed as any other marine type foods. It's harvesting, it's logistics, it's getting it to the markets, getting it to the processors, packaging. So all the fundamentals we're going to be going through today in distribution is very reflective of any kind of marine foodstuffs.
Perfect. Let's talk a bit about the Seafood Business Accelerator before your presentation. So how would you describe it?
I find it a fascinating way for rural fishers and small processors in British Columbia to get involved in a cohort system where they can exchange ideas and understand some of the challenges that others in the same sort of situation embrace by bringing in experts and developing some kind of a innovation plan. You can just see that the simplification of all of these activities come into fold where these fishers and other partners really start to see how they can plan their business.
Awesome. And who specifically do you think the program's for? Who gets the most benefit out of it?
BC rural communities and small processing food hubs. There's a variety of players in this space, actually, that I think most British Columbians really don't appreciate. I think the more important thing too, Brady, is new generations. We're seeing in academic communities, some of our universities, the University of Vancouver Island and so forth, are trying to encourage new generations to be involved with this new type of economic activity, or as I should say, a modified version of what has always been.
That's a great point. I know we're seeing it in all industries, even outside of the food industry and seafood industry. The dynamics are changing. The generations are moving and things are progressing, and it's a new time to do business. So we're looking for new ways to do business, and I like your points about the rural communities adopting to that as well as the universities. So I think it's time to dive into your presentation here. So I'll just pull it up and we can get started.
Great, thank you. Well, in this slide, you can see the beauty of the innovation plan, a completed one. and how it is concise. There's infographics there. It provides the not only just the entrepreneur, but those that you're trying to discuss your plan of where you want to go and how you want to present your company in a great format. It's easy to understand and read. It interfaces with each of the various subphases that you see in there or categories. It's just a great way to communicate your business. So as I say, we're talking about distribution, and this is a blank template. Just to give you an idea, about 50% of what you're looking at this in terms of this canvas. And a canvas, kind of look at it as a painting. You're ready to paint, and now you want to, am I going to use red or whatever? And the yellow area, we're going to talk about distribution today. So this image is a very, very traditional image within seafood, just to give you an idea of flow of how you go from the catch to the end user. And as you can see, there's 6 different sort of broad phases to consider, the harvesting and then getting it to dry shore in a food safe way so that there's the temperature's right, and then removing the head or doing a freeze, a glaze or whatever, toting the fish and getting it ready to send on to the next secondary processing, which could be vacuum packed fillets, or it could be going into processing some kind of a seafood meal or smoked salmon. There's just the third step is what product, what finished product are you contemplating to go out and market under either your brand or another brand. And then of course distribution, and distribution does involve logistics and warehousing and movement of product, but it's also it's an entity. It can be an intermediary that actually is going to purchase the product and resell the product, your brand, onto either food services like restaurants, something you can't possibly do now. You can't go to every restaurant and deliver your product. You need a more efficient way to get that great fish out there, or into retail stores, either locally or regionally or even nationally, depending on, how much product you intend to supply. And then, of course, your consumer, the ultimate destination. And this is where you hope to see repeat sales and hope to see that people are enjoying your product. So when for small fishers or smaller businesses, it's sort of wise to understand the differences between distributor and broker in the sense of moving your product. Distributors, they'll once you come into contact and they like what you're doing and they're prepared to purchase your product, they will now buy that product, and now your product sits at what is called a wholesale price for the next sell. Typically, you get it to them. It depends on your contract with the distributor and who you select, the size of the distributor, but sometimes you can agree. There can be an FOB situation too. Well, they'll come and pick it up, and that's all negotiated in terms of the price. Now, what they'll do is they're going to add margin. They're going to add their margin on. And what we're going to be talking about through a lot of distributors and resellers is the notion of margin. And as they resell, it actually starts to impact your final price. Each time you're adding margin on, the price to the consumer starts to go up. So you want to take that into consideration. Know when you need a distributor as well. Some provide some very good sales, marketing support, trade show representation. And typically, because you're a founder and entrepreneur, you're part of the brand. You will be attending that, and it would be wise to do so because you can see reaction to your product. You can see how well your distributor operates and supports your brand. And it's a great way to get greater exposure. A lot of distributors and wholesalers too, they have a wide variety of product assortment. And if, for example, a frozen sable fish portion, going to high-end restaurants matches specialized seafood distributor like Albion or Lundale or some of these more local ones, you want to go and present to them that you can supply them that particular product. Brokers are more on the sales representation end. They will represent your business or your brand, which is the same thing. They typically, if you're talking to a broker, they have those buyer relationships you don't have. They know how the system works. They can understand programs you're going to have to look at from a cost perspective to support your brand, because you may have to do that. Some brokers, they represent an array of different food companies and see that they can, move your product quite well. Some are small boutique. They don't have quite the same resources as the big national food brokerages, but I'm a firm believer in sort of dominate the niche. Really get that solid evidence that your product's gaining some good traction with the consumers you want to ultimately target. They don't purchase your product though. Brokers don't. They work off commission. So, that's something you want to calculate in your head, that if you decide to use a broker as opposed to hiring on a direct salesperson to represent and work with distributors and go to trade shows, it'll, roughly 5, sometimes 7% in different markets will be part of the commission on the invoiced price. Some can be fee-based. But when you're starting out, you may be confronted with what they call retainers. In other words, X amount per month to sort of build the brand up and try and get some, new sales traction. Ultimately, you're responsible for your accounting, though. You're paying the bills and so on and so forth. But brokers will take your POs and they'll manage the POs and they'll make sure you're in line with the buyer's programs. So there are a variety of different distribution models, and we could sort of go quite in depth with it. And I think as you get into it and you research a little bit, you're going to find some local, some special seafood, and then down to what is called the conventional. You've probably seen these trucks on the roads, whether it's Cisco, one of the world's largest, or Gordon, not too far behind. But they've got food in these trucks and they're moving them from warehouse to warehouse and then ultimately on the small trucks out to the restaurants or universities or any kind of food service entities. The specialty is, as I say, they're a little bit more niche focused, or, in this case, seafood specific could be. They know where the seafood buyers are. There's pre-COVID, really. I mean, I worked with a company down in the States that flew, actually. Not kind of a good carbon footprint thing right now, but they found in certain parts of the United States, high quality fish was in demand with certain chefs and certain people in the cities. And from that stemmed, of course, the whole notion during COVID, direct to consumer. And, whether it was online or utilizing, I believe there's a few, you can actually go to stores and pick up your product. It's really quite an interesting model. And some community supported fisheries, like you're seeing, know your fishermen. There's a couple of BC companies that have done very well with this, actually giving recognition to the fisher. There's really quite a good feeling that you're supporting local fishers. These are the people that know fish better than anyone else. It gives a great sense of supporting BC fisheries.
That's great points, especially, talking about COVID, how we've seen the dynamic change a little bit and shift locally and domestically and a bit nationally here. How, looking at some of the different channels that we've talked about, distributors versus brokers, direct to consumer, community supported fisheries, how does that dynamic change when we start thinking internationally? What route do businesses usually go, do fishers usually go when they first start looking at selling outside of our borders?
Well, again, it's movement of the product and who has the attention of the buyers, and a little bit of research is always extremely helpful. If you're, for example, is it a trading situation too? You have to consider that. Are you moving tonnage or are you moving finished product? So your product form really kind of matters with that. I believe caution to scale on distribution a little bit. Sort of understand different markets have different ways of doing business. It's wise to inquire a couple of Google searches and how things, operate in a particular area, or more importantly, check out associations on who's exporting to a market that you're thinking of, whether it's cross-border. And if you are, the differences between Quebec and here, maybe Quebec utilizes brokers more than, let's say, Western Canada. It could be a language thing. It could be other things that you have to contemplate, that what's the best way to get your product moving, in a good fluid way.
Excellent. Thank you.
So the modern seafood chain, as we've been talking a little bit, it is changing. There are new things to be aware of, but more importantly, it keeps you in understanding what options do you have in distribution. Word of mouth through peers, literature, trade magazines, even trade shows. Some of those can be very helpful. Farmers markets, believe it or not, there's a great bunch of conversations with others in the same position you are. Product mix, what I call product market fit, is always important to make sure, again, you've got enough supporting evidence that you feel your product will do well. You might be going into cattle country, but there's a lot of fish people that are looking forward to having access to some good BC fish. I've always found attending trade shows and utilizing government-led programs, they can get you access to chat with distributors and how do they do it in different markets too. Sometimes that can be, something new that hadn't dawned on you. Talking to buyers is good because they'll tell you who their preferred distributors are and why, and that you need to go through them or the product needs to go through them. So it's almost like you have to go and do a pitch to the distributor with the pull of the retail buyer bringing the product onto the shelves. Values are really important. Stick to your values as a business owner. Small, you're proud of your catch, you're proud of your product, you're proud of what it entails in terms of sustainable practices, so on and so forth. You want to make sure that message continually flows through within the food chain. Always back up with research and align yourself with allies. We live in a great age today where competition is almost getting diluted from collaboration. The whole idea of collaborative alliances and so forth. I'll do this bit, you do that bit. And it works well with the strength of a distributor, for example, versus the strength of you as a harvester, just spot on with your specifications of quality fish and product that you provide.
I think that's a great point, especially around breaking down the walls of competition that we traditionally have been seeing. I don't want to overstep, but I'd like to assume that if someone was in the seaweed industry, for example, they could reach out to the Pacific Seaweed Industry Association to help align themselves with allies and help kind of grow their network. And I'm assuming that's similar with other industry associations, the shellfish harvesters and other ones. Is it a similar thing? Reach out to your industry association to help find those allies?
I think so, Brady, because one is not the fact that it saves time, but it narrows down your search, that they have this information available. They actually want you to succeed if you're contemplating to getting into this industry. And as British Columbians, we want our new approach to obtaining foods, processing foods, and giving back to the environment and sustainability practices. We all have a common goal now. And we at the Seaweed Association, we have great ties with the Scottish Seaweed Association that, you get great leverage. As I say, the cooperative approach will have long-term benefits that it's nice to see these ones finally, for those that want to get into seafood harvesting or processing, as well as seaweed, you're part of building a really great new community.
Awesome.
So why use a distributor? Well, a lot of it comes down to that you're at a part of your business now that you're focused more on operations, or you're focused on future planning, or you're trying to get your company up and going and getting product moving. A distributor can help get that going for you. It's also, the time bandits of being an owner. You now are confident that you have the sales playbook. You've made decisions on who you feel will be the best to take your product to market. So you can focus on other things, new product innovations and so forth. It's time to consider, let's move the product. Let's get the store counts up. Let's hit the gas a bit more. So it does save time and money, of course, on your end. The thing about payment too, just as a cautionary thing, do make sure your distributors are in terms. Cash flow is important, and try and be careful about cash burn. Those receivables, a little bit of commerce thing, but keep an eye on the receivables a little bit. But there's a lot of very good, reputable distributors in British Columbia that have well-established, good credentials, good names, and the buyers respect doing business with them, retailers and food service operators. The cons, I think what is meant by less margin is more like, I would say, more impact on margin of your final price. If you remember that quick little image we had at the beginning of this, it goes through a series of different types of hands to the final consumer. And each one that your product goes through, there's additional cost, added margin to it. So you don't want a $5 piece of fish to be $23 by the time it hits a high-end store, because then your turn starts to reduce a little bit. You're not going to get the sales velocities that you hope, or that could be your target. That this is a beautiful piece of fish and it deserves that value. Competition to get on the shelf, stay on the shelf, and making sure if you've chosen a wrong distributor that can't do that, you could be wasting a lot of time and valuable market time to get to market. So this is why, feel bold, talk to people about a distributor you're contemplating, get a little bit of referral. And they're looking at it from their side of the table too. How much energy are we going to spend on this to get our salespeople out selling the product and getting some movement? Tougher to stand out. Well, it depends if you've got a branded product or you've got a commodity. That's just going to be dependent on your product form and how you want to present it to your consumer, end user, or food service operator. Selling to a distributor. Well, matchmaking, yeah, you want to make sure that you're not talking to, when you're selling frozen product, to somebody that doesn't have freezer trucks and somebody that doesn't really understand frozen category or whatever. So be mindful. Don't get too anxious about this is the only one I can get. Think these things through. Product market fit. There was a book that came out a couple of years ago that sort of emphasized this concept. It's still a little bit of applicable. It means you really want to make sure you've done your due diligence, that there's a gap in the market for your product, and that you can explain that to the distributor. This is something that you've got supporting background, that this product is a good fit for not only the market, but also the distributor to carry. Meeting requirements, very big food safety and labeling, particularly in seafood. And I'm speaking of labeling of species. You want to make sure that what you're providing doesn't disqualify the distributor, and as well as vice versa with yourself. But food safety is very important. If you've got a finished package, what kind of packaging is it? Does it stand out? Is it going to help your brand get the attention it needs? Purchase planning cycles, you'll be getting into that. Order cycles, and smoked salmon could be higher volumes during the holiday time, and then it tends to go a little bit softer during the summer times. Just understand that from production, but working with your distributor too. It's important they understand those cycles, so that what can they expect in terms of order planning. You've got to support your brand, though. If you're going branded, it's a must. And you got to not only just consider the cost, but the brand equity you're trying to build there, whether it's your own name, area of catch, whatever it may be. But you've got to consider a reasonable amount on the volume you're supplying that you're going to support the brand. Pricing, that's always an interesting one. Sometimes you may offer volume discounts. Sometimes, this is as good of a price as you can offer by what you need as a margin. Work out what margins you're going to need. There's no point reducing your price to such that it becomes a profitless exercise for you. In other words, you've gone too low and the distributor is capturing more on their margin end than you. Fitting in always. And a lot of that too, I see as relationship building too. Once you really get into it and you get to work with a good distributor and they know how you operate, how they operate. If you've got a good fit with your product in the market, you got a good fit with the relationship with the distributor, and you see that consumers are picking the product up and purchasing it. You know that it works well, that your business model makes sense and your product makes sense. Preparing to meet a distributor. Well, these four fundamental things, I won't go into too much detail, but go in with a set agenda. And make it relevant. Try not to wing it too much. Go in with one or two key objectives that X and X told me about you, that you move frozen halibut, and this is my area of catch, and blah blah blah. Anticipate questions more on cost, price, kind of the commerce end of it, sales efforts, that sort of thing. And gather materials, have some collateral, some samples, give them an idea that you've put a lot of energy into your product and that you're ready to go. You're actually in decision mode of what distributor you're contemplating. Like anything else in communications, without getting too complex with it, just really listen clearly to their terms and conditions. You want to make sure it doesn't negatively impact your business. Most are pretty standard, margins are pretty standard. And if you've done your research, you know where they're selling to primarily anyway. That's why you're in their office having a little bit of a chat there. Like anything else in time, how you problem solve with them, orders missed, stuff like that. You work it through, and you just work it through the best you can. Nothing's perfect. Trucks break down, all kinds of things. Door times aren't met, all this stuff. But I think overall, if the relationship's good and everybody's trying to solve problems and make it easier and open up opportunities for you, you certainly want to continue on building that relationship. I just wanted to say one thing. It's really important too, on the last slide there, Brady, that summarize and clarify and stay in touch. Be current. Like, keep an eye on the data flow of the sales going through, the orders coming in. Go to the stores and so forth and see, is it on the shelf? Is it what's being promised? So you have to pay attention. You got to become a little bit of a category manager yourself. And this is hard for rural fishers. There's no question. But whenever you have that opportunity, take a look at where your product's situated and how well things are going. And don't be afraid to address concerns. You both want to win. The distributor wants to win, and you want to win. So deeper dive into this whole pricing thing. The food industry does work on margins, and depending on how many intermediaries or hands purchase and resell, margins attached to it. And the math becomes, what's your FOB price, meaning your selling price, at your dock? It may have been $5. All of a sudden, as I mentioned before, it becomes 16, 17. And you wonder, how does all that happen? So think in terms of margin when you're looking at final prices. A lot of them call them SRPs, suggested retail price. And when you go into a Whole Foods and you see that beautiful sable fish with a beautiful crusting on it, or whatever product you come up with, at least you'll be able to backtrack why those margins, the impact on your final price. A lot of small vendors too, some of the highest quality fish come from them. A beautiful spring or or whatever it may be. These are beautiful, beautiful pieces of fish that, when you start to add it up with the raw material price down to the finished price, can get quite pricey. But they're considered high value, you see. As small fishers, that becomes a unique selling point too, though. You've got something that the big guys that are hauling in tons and tons of fish can't provide in terms of just fish handling. So value and prices, it comes down to what the consumer values, what that chef values, that area of catch, you, the fisher. All these are part of the marketing campaign. At the end here, again, there is such value in doing your own price audits. Really know your category. Get your little notepad out and go, who's doing what? Take a look at the quality of the product in there. Where's the shelf space coverage? Where are you positioned in that freezer or on the fresh counter or whatever it may be? It's helpful. It reinforces what it is you're trying to accomplish for your intended consumer.
I think that's great to touch on. You can't just be a great fisher. You have to be the expert of your catch. You have to know the market. You have to know what other people are doing and know where you fit in it.
Well, and Brady, my experience, they are. You may be good at marketing and selling fish, but do you know fish, the area of catch, the quality and texture of that meat? The fishers do. So distribution reporting. I guess we're going to get into the innovation plan canvas here a little bit on distribution in that particular slot. I think it's really wise. It's a good exercise to sort of brainstorm on your own and investigate on your own, identifying the various channels within this subcategory. And a lot of that will be your own due diligence. A lot of that will be your own primary and research. A lot of it will be secondary. There's a ton of information. Websites are very helpful on, okay, what products does this distributor carry? Does D2C, some of the local Skipper Auto and Organic Ocean and some of these other ones, it warrants a telephone call. Does that make sense for me? We went back to fitting and so forth. Can they see what I'm seeing? Can synergy start to develop here? And I have a story as a rural fisher, something that can be very applicable to what they're trying to do to cast their marketing campaign.
I'll pop in for this one because I spent a bunch of time helping people fill in their plans with the last Seafood Business Accelerator. So this is just an example of what you'd put in your box, your little square on the canvas itself. So it breaks it down to the subcategories, whether you're going with a distributor, a broker, a direct to consumer, and then give little details on how or in what way you plan on working with that channel. So this example, they're planning to work with Cisco and one of our local warehouses called Because. With the brokers, they may eventually, but it's not their current focus, and they'll do some direct-to-consumer through farmers markets and through e-commerce websites. So it's just a snapshot of your distribution channels laid out on the paper so that everyone can see it. Looking at next steps here, as with the other presentations that you've worked through at this point, keep working on the innovation plan canvas, take a stab at identifying the distribution channels that you'll work in, watch the rest of the webinars that we have coming up, and then revisit the boxes once you're done and see if you need to change any of your answers at that time. So that's an awesome presentation. Thank you very much for that, Bruce. Your wealth of knowledge. As an SBA expert, have you seen the innovation plan canvas help the folks that you've worked with, or how have you seen the canvas really be useful for these people?
There's a real art in simplicity. And it's hard. It's actually hard to do because we like to complicate things, and sometimes it misdirects our thinking. We get caught up in something. With the innovation plan canvas, you see, if you're stuck, you can come back to it later. I think one of the most important things, Brady, is to be able to express your ideas down on paper and not be intimidated by an 80-page plan and all this sort of stuff. It's conveying the same thing, you see, and it's prioritizing things. It's helping to get that focus you need. In working with the SP SBA participants and so forth, they really found value and clarity when they wanted to talk about what they were doing. It was there in front of them, or talk to their staff, or talk to the bank, even the financial people that they can see how everything's interacting. You've given this thought. I just find it a great experience that the participants can actually describe what it is they're trying to do their way without feeling intimidated. They own it. I like that.
That's great. That is a great explanation of how canvases in general can be useful, but even more so how the innovation plan canvas can be utilized by anybody who's looking to create some innovation within their business. So,
Yeah.
thank you again for your time. Thank you again for being a part of this. I'm sure that any of our seafood businesses that are watching this, or our seaweed businesses that are watching this, are making notes and took your name down, and we'll be reaching out soon. But thank you very much, Bruce.
Thank you for your time, Brady. Great to see you.
So the next webinar in the series is marketing activities. Remember, you can watch the videos in any order you want and as many times as you like. Thank you.
Thank you.